You're held in a dimly lit room, waiting for someone to come talk to you. You're being interrogated as the primary suspect in a recent crime. In walks an officer who sets down a plate of food in front of you. You start to feel a small hint of thanks, warmth, and a reminder of home. As you begin to eat, you think of your past, times that you ate comforting and simple food like this, food your mother cooked for you. And then the guilt begins to hit. You never meant to turn to this life, and the only thing you can think of now is how to redeem yourself. The food, while being a peace offering, was also a method to coerce you into opening up and speaking, and you didn't even realize it. So, what kind of dish would make you talk? What's up everybody, it's me Johnny G, and today we're going to explore two dishes that were mentioned during the Arknights Atto event, that were both used as comfort food offering to bribe suspects into talking. And I'm going to not only show the cooking process as usual, but I'm going to decide between these two dishes, just which one would make me talk, if they were presented to me. Now, the two dishes in question. Near the beginning of the story, when Hoshiguma was captured in Mitsukue, she was brought into a room with a detective, and Detective Koretou had offered her a fried Meatchop and Rice dish, essentially Tonkatsu with rice. During the conversation, Hoshiguma also revealed that her dish of choice when performing interrogations in Lungmen was Cheung Fun. Both dishes relatively simple to make, but are also comfort foods from Asian culture. Today, we'll be making Cheung Fun with char siu pork and scallions as a filling, and we will also make tonkatsu with a cabbage slaw and rice to make the fried Meatchop and Rice dish. Now, I will put some example recipes down in the comments for some things that you guys can follow along with, aside from my own recipe that you'll see during the process here, and you'll be able to use those to make this for yourself. And I gathered my ideas and inspiration from these recipes and more. But without further ado, it's time to dive in and start cooking our dishes so that we can figure out which dish is more likely to get me to talk and get information, whether I was detained in Mitsukue or Lungmen. Alright, so let's start off with some prep work for the Cheung Fun dish. This is kind of the more difficult dish of the two that I'm working on today. So we're going to do a little bit of the prep work ahead of time to get things going, and then we'll kind of go back and forth as the process goes along in making certain things for each dish, and we'll finish up with the Cheung Fun last while making the tonkatsu dish in the middle. So the first thing that we need to do here, we're going to mince up some garlic that we're going to use both as part of our marinade, and we're going to make a homemade sauce that we need for this as well. So let me go ahead and get a bulb of garlic out here, and let's clear some of this paper off of the outside. Clean that up when we're done. And what we're going to use here, whoop, dropped it. We're going to use about 3 cloves roughly for the marinade. And we'll add an extra one. I like extra garlic. I don't know about you guys. And then we will add 1 that we're going to use for our sauce. Let me get rid of this paper. Now, since we last talked, I have a newer knife set, so that's going to make this fairly easier. And what I like to do is I give the garlic a good crack, peel off the outer layer of all that extra paper and stuff that's stuck to it, and then when I'm cleaning garlic, I take and just cut the very ends off, because you get that woody stem type of part on each end sometimes. So that's 1 clove. We're going to set that aside, and then let's work on these other 4. And then, like I said, we're going to mince them up really fine. So give them all a good crack here. Okay, just 1. Now I know there are some other methods to opening your garlic up, essentially, but I really do. This has always just kind of been a simple method for me, but you got to be careful because sometimes things like this happen where a little chunk will fall out as you're cleaning it off. So you just have to be a little careful and watch for it. But we got it. No big deal. In there, these are all cleaned off of the paper. We'll get the paper off of our thing. Now, garlic is very sticky, so like I said, I always like to trim the ends of each clove as we go. But it is very sticky to work with, so it's always nice to keep something on hand to either wipe your hands off when you're done or to wash them real quick. So I always like working next to the sink. All right, so let's bring back our other clove. And like I said, we're just gonna mince it up. Now for me, I just take it and I start chopping it into small little parts. And then once I get it small enough, I really start to mince it up. And you could do this with a food processor or something like that. You can get one of those little choppers. You can even use like a garlic press if you want. Personally, I like garlic presses, the concept of it, but they never work well for me. So I always just like to mince my garlic by hand if I can. But one of those little chopper things for vegetables and stuff is really cool, and they can help as well. Especially you can get those ones that kind of spin as you press down the chop. They spin and rotate to make sure that stuff stays off of the blades and isn't as sticky. But completely up to you how you like to do it. For me, this is just my preferred method. It doesn't take very long in the long run. Now, we've got a nice decent mince here. Nothing too crazy, but we'll set aside our knife and we're just gonna kind of divide roughly a clove's worth out for our sauce here that we're gonna make. And then the rest we'll keep to the other side of our cutting board. And we're done with that for now. Now, for the sauce we're gonna make, we are going to make a homemade hoisin sauce. Now, this is something that is pretty much common from my understanding in Chinese style barbecue and things like that. And you can go and buy it at the store. It has a little bit of a kick to it, a little bit of sweetness, but it's not too difficult to make. So what we're gonna need for this is soy sauce, peanut butter, we're gonna use a little rice wine vinegar, some sesame oil, a little bit of sriracha, the garlic, and ground black pepper. So basically all we have to do is gather all these ingredients and put them into a bowl. So we're gonna put our garlic clove in, put the rest of that aside again. We need about 2 teaspoons of the rice wine vinegar. I'm gonna kind of eyeball this as I go. We need about 1/8 of a teaspoon of the ground black pepper, and I'll just grind a little bit in. Now, roughly a teaspoon or so of the sriracha. Now, I know you could use hot sauce and things as well, but I like sriracha, and I've seen a couple different recipes for this where, you know, it alternates on what to use. So, go ahead with that. And we need about 2 teaspoons of the sesame oil. And again, we're just kind of eyeballing right now for this, for the sauce in particular. It's nothing too crazy. Need about a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. Again, a little bit of an eyeball. And then about 2 tablespoons of our peanut butter. Now this, I'm just gonna get my finger in there and get a little bit dirty as we put that in there. And now, we'll go ahead and take a small whisk and begin to incorporate all of this together. And the hardest part of it all is getting the peanut butter mixed in, because it's thicker compared to the thin of the soy sauce. But after it starts to break down a little bit, it starts to incorporate together. pretty much it. Nice tang to it. Again, just a little hint of sweetness, a little bit of spice, but overall, a pretty fun little sauce that we'll use here. And I've also seen some recipes where you can add some like brown sugar and stuff to it, but we're not really gonna need that. That's okay. We're not gonna use that in this one. We've got the peanut butter. I think everything else we've got is just enough here. All right, so next up, we're gonna go ahead and make our marinade here for the char siu pork. And basically, we're gonna combine a handful of ingredients and get that ready. Then we're gonna slice down our meat, get it marinating for a little while we start the rest of the process for other stuff. So, the first thing that we need here is we need sugar. We're gonna use about a 1/4 cup of white sugar. So, simple enough. Let's get a 1/4 cup, get that in our bowl there. And we can set that aside. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of salt. So, we're going to get this. There's 1, 2. We're going to use now a 1/2 teaspoon of 5-spice powder. Now we're going to use this, but we're also going to include a couple of ingredients as well, different ones that I have set aside here. So let me get a 1/2 teaspoon out. All right, so there's a 1/2 teaspoon of that. I'll set that aside. Next up, we have some cloves, some ground cloves, and we're going to use, again, about a 1/2 teaspoon. We'll make it probably closer to a 1/4. We use about a 1/4 teaspoon of the ground cloves. And the same, we use about a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. If you have the opportunity to use fresh ginger would be better, but I unfortunately was unable to get some at this point in time, so we're working with what we have here. We're going to use some white pepper, about a 1/4 teaspoon of that as well. I'll have to pour that out into that. Okay. And next, we need a piece of star anise here. We're going to go ahead and kind of grind this up. And I have a little coffee / spice grinder here that I love to use. So we're going to use that and grind up our spice here. Put that in the bottom of that. And you guys can see it. It's just a little grinder. And then all we got to do is and as you guys can see, it's ground up nice and fine in there. So we're just going to use all of that, minus the grinder piece. It just fell out on us, but that's okay. Put that aside. But that was just one piece. It's probably about the same, about a 1/4 teaspoon when all ground up and small like that. And now we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of sesame oil. We're going to use a tablespoon of soy sauce. I'm using a 1/2 tablespoon here, so I'll use 2 of these. 1, 2. We are going to use now a tablespoon of our hoisin sauce that we just made. So we'll take the same thing. Here's 1, 2, and those weren't really even, so I'll add just a little bit more, especially since, you know, sometimes the store-bought stuff can be a little bit stronger. No big deal. And then we're going to add our garlic. Put that into the bowl. And then the last thing before we get it going is roughly a tablespoon of hot water. I just got water straight from the tap. Not a lot, but enough that we can go ahead and use it to whisk together our mixture here, our marinade. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And as you can see, it has this kind of dark caramelly color to it. It's pretty nice. I like the look of it. And it smells wonderful. It smells very sesame-like. Absolutely delicious. Now, one final thing, if you want to, and we're going to use this now just because this is something that it's kind of up to you. It helps to add some stickiness to the sauce and keep it thicker, but you can use about 2 tablespoons of maltose or honey, and I've even seen some recipes that would use a molasses as an option. And we're not going to use molasses, of course, but the option of honey makes this thicker. And you could use up to 2 tablespoons. So that's what we're going to do here. There's 1.5. And 2. Fresh bottle of honey that I had to get for this. Clean out our spoon there. I like to get my hands in. I get my hands messy, mix things up, mess things up. It's all good. Now again, this is a little bit of a last minute addition, but like I said, it makes things a little stickier. And when you rub this marinade on the pork, it's going to make things nice and help to get the outside sticky and caramelized and whatnot, however you want to say it. So let's set our whisk aside and our mixture. All right, now you want a decent sized pork shoulder butt roast, whatever you want to call it. This one literally says pork shoulder butt roast. This one's bone in, but you want to make sure that you find one with a decent fat cap. And this one's okay. This one's got a nice chunk of fat. Compared to the others that I've seen in the store, this one looks nice. So we're going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to slice some of it down to make this recipe. We're not going to use the whole thing because this one here is roughly 10 pounds worth, almost 11. And we're going to use maybe 3-4 pounds roughly to go with this amount of marinade that we made. So I'm going to go slice this open in the sink so that I can drain the blood out of the package. We'll bring it back here and slice it down. All right, so as I said, I took it over to the sink, sliced open the package, and then I went ahead and rinsed off the blood. And now we're just going to slice this down and get this ready. We're going to get a little bit of it, like I said, maybe about a little less than half of it. This is about 11 pounds. We're going to want 3 to 4. So the rest of it I'll put away after we're done. So this looks about sufficient. And again, we want to keep this fat cap. So let me go ahead and put this away, and then we'll have the space to work. All right, so now that we've got that chunk put away, we've got the remaining piece that we're going to work with. Now it's about 3 or so inches thick here. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut it into some long strips that we'll trim up, we'll use later. Some thick, long strips. It'll be easier to marinate and to cook with. Just a couple of them. Nothing too crazy. And we could trim it further down if we want to, because as you can see, like right here in particular, it's kind of coming out. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of coming out to be longer as we trim into it. and I'm having a little bit of trouble getting through because of this fat cap. But once you get a chunk of the top done, you can kind of spread it a little bit and then continue to work with it until it's nice and trimmed up. So now again, we got thicker strips here, and we're gonna split these roughly down the middle. You can chunk it as well if you want, but again, about a 2 to 3 inch strip of each. You want it to be a little bit thicker. And for this, like I said, I just kind of sliced it down, and then we're splitting it down the middle. So we got about 4 strips there so far. 2 more pieces to slice up here. This one actually looks pretty good. So I'm gonna trim a little bit here on each side, and then just set that aside. And this one here, we're going right down the middle. And there we go. And like I said, you don't trim any excess fat because that's gonna help in the rendering process when we actually get to cook it. So what we're gonna do now, we are going to use this and essentially put the pork in here, and we're gonna rub it all on. We're gonna rub our marinade onto all these pieces as we go here. Put it in, get it all marinated as best as we can. Nice and covered. Using our hands, just kind of move it around in the bowl. Now be careful, I am using a larger bowl, but you do want to be careful in terms of making sure that you don't splash stuff all over your counter. I will sanitize the counter after I'm done because of the fact that I worked with raw meat here, but now that we got this all marinated, we are ready. What we're going to do is we are going to cover this and refrigerate it. So, ideally, you want to cover this and refrigerate it for at least 8 hours to overnight. But if you're in a pinch, you could do this for about 2 to 4, which is roughly what we're going to do here today. We're going to marinate it for about 2 to 4 hours and then cook it up after. So let's get this covered in the fridge, sanitize our counter, and move on to the next step. Alright, so for the next part of our recipe here, we need to make rice flour for the Cheung Fun dish. And this is something that I wasn't able to come across in my local grocers, and I didn't really have a way to get out to an Asian grocer for ingredients, so this is just something that I'm gonna have to make by myself. But thankfully, it's very simple. You just basically need to use a food processor or blender or something with these kind of blades that you can blend up rice really fine into a powder. And that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna put about a cup worth of dry white rice in here. And what we need essentially as far as our rice flour goes here is we need about 3.5 ounces for the recipe that I'm using for the Cheung Fun. So that roughly equals about 3/4 of a cup of the flour. So hopefully this grinds enough for us. If not, I might have to grind a little bit more, but we've got about a cup in there. We're gonna put our lid on, and then we're gonna put this on high speed and let it go. Now, my food processor was not quite grinding things down the way that I wanted to. So, an alternative method, and something that works really, really well to get the rice into the fine powder like this to make rice flour, is using the spice grinder like we did earlier for the star anise. So, using that, it may take smaller batches, but it does work in a fairly quick amount of time. So, we'll continue with this method until we get it all done. now we have that all done. We have more than what we need here. And again, it's just ground up rice. So that's our rice flour. We're gonna set that aside and continue on with now making our fried Meatchop and Rice. Alright, so next up, we're gonna start working on a Japanese sesame dressing that's gonna go on a bed of cabbage, essentially, when we make our tonkatsu, or fried Meatchop and Rice. So, to start that off, for the sesame dressing, we're gonna use sesame seeds. And we're gonna toast them in a skillet, about 3 tablespoons worth. We're gonna toast them on medium heat, just a couple minutes. We're gonna gently stir them as we go. And during this process, that's pretty much all we need to worry about, is just giving them that gentle stir here and there every so often, or even just shaking them like that. Again, keep them over medium heat. You don't use any oil, and we're more or less just going to do this until they start to change color a little bit. They'll start to turn like a lighter brown. And again, you can shake them around in the pan since they'll move more freely, or stir them like this. Now I just started the heat, so it'll take a moment or two for the pan to start to heat up, and you'll start to smell the aroma as well of the sesame seeds as they continue to toast up. So we'll just give this a few moments, and again, get them all toasted and ready to go for our dressing. And now we are nearing the completion of toasting our sesame seeds. If you guys can see, there's some, instead of the plain white, you can start to see some browning on the seeds, some different coloration coming to it. And like I said, you don't want to over toast them, you don't want to do it too long, because you will start to burn them very, very quickly. They're not something that you can leave in the pan for too long, especially in this case where you're not using any kind of oil. We're just toasting them up lightly. Now that they're done, we'll go ahead and turn our burner off and set these aside to move on to the next part. Okay, so we're going to get a lot of mileage out of this spice grinder today, but what we're going to do next is we are going to put our sesame seeds in here, get them ground up real fine. And the thing is, the classic way to do this is with an item that I don't have in my kitchen, probably should get, would be a lot of fun to have and to use, but is with what they call a mortar and pestle, where you would basically put these into the bottom of that and grind them up with that in particular. But again, since I don't have that on hand, we're just going to go ahead and use the spice grinder, which should achieve a similar result in just grinding them down fine. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, we're all done with that already. They are a nice, fine grind, and man, do they smell good. Sesame seed ground up, toasted, and in powder form. So we're going to pour that into a bowl here. Make sure it gets all out of our little container here, which is trying to keep some of our seed powder. We don't want that. And we can use our spatula here carefully so we don't mess up our rubber part by cutting it on the blades or anything like that. But there's our toasted up seeds. And now, to make the rest of this dressing, we're going to use some Kewpie mayo, some rice vinegar, soy sauce, sugar, a little bit of water, and sesame oil. So, let's get our Kewpie mayo first. We need about 2 tablespoons. So I'll use a tablespoon here, and I'll try to get some out of my bottle. I have another bottle on the shelf, but I wanted to use up what's in the fridge first. Let's squeeze it all down. I love these bottles, they're fun. Just in general, fun. Okay, here's 1 tablespoon. We'll get a spoon here to help scoop it out. and let's get another one. Okay. Alright, so that's our Kewpie mayo. Next, we need a similar amount. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of our rice vinegar. 1. And I'm just using the same tablespoon because what's it going to hurt? The ingredients are being mixed together anyways. So there's that. Next up, 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce. Get a little extra in there. There's 1. And there's our half. Okay. Then we need a teaspoon of sugar. There's a teaspoon, just a little pinch more because it wasn't completely full when I dumped it. Not a problem there. Next up, 1/2 teaspoon of water. Now an alternative is mirin. You can use mirin, but I don't have any on hand, and the process of making homemade mirin, you can use sake and sugar, but you have to boil it down and things like that. But in a few different recipes I had found, water is definitely a perfect substitute that you can use for it. And then last but not least, we need 1/2 teaspoon of our sesame oil. Okay. Now we just need to mix it all together. So I'll use the spoon from earlier. Give it a good mix. Oops, splashed a little bit on the counter there. You could use a whisk, you could use whatever to mix this up, but I'm just using the spoon since we already have it at our disposal. And now that it's mixed, yum. Very good. And again, later, that's going to go on basically a bed of cabbage that will go with our tonkatsu. So, let's move on. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and make a homemade tonkatsu sauce for the fried meat chop. So this is relatively simple. We are going to, I already minced up some garlic, so we're gonna put that in here. So same process as earlier, we just minced that up. We need various tablespoons of stuff. We are going to use, whoops, fling it everywhere, but we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, which my brown sugar is a little bit light. I went and had to grind it up because it was starting to dry up. So I went ahead and tossed it in the food processor and blended it up so I could still use it. But you could use brown sugar or regular white sugar, but this should give it more of a caramelly kind of taste and flavor or look to it as well, darker look. Next up, we need some soy sauce. We're going to use roughly a tablespoon. There we go. Now, we're going to use about 5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, or however you say it. I know the internet likes to call it wash your sister sauce, which is kind of funny. Oops. That's plenty since I dumped extra in. Now, about 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, which is pretty thick, so it's going to take a little while to get it out here. There it goes. There's 1. And if it'll come out. hard to shake out of there. But there's 2. Now the cool thing about Tonkatsu sauce is it has this dark look and whatnot to it. And some of the bottles when you buy it from the store will say like fruit and vegetable sauce. So it can be used in a variety of ways, but it's classically used with a tonkatsu cutlet. And now, to get the liquid out, we need about 5 tablespoons here of ketchup, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to add a little bit of ground ginger, just for a little bit of an extra kick. Maybe about a half teaspoon there, a little bit more. Not too crazy. And then I'm going to throw a little pinch of MSG in for some flavor. Because it's the king flavor. So let's go ahead and whisk this up here. Okay, and as you can see, it's a very dark colored sauce, very sticky. A blend of sweet and tangy, and it's really, really going to help to bring out the flavor of that fried meat chop. And you can pour it over top or dip it in it, which we'll kind of do a little bit of both as we try this. So let's go ahead and put this in the fridge for now. And now we're going to go ahead and get ready to chop some cabbage, as well as get our rice going for the last parts of our fried meat chop and rice, prior to actually cooking the meat chop itself. So first up, we're going to measure out some rice here and get it going, so that way we're in good shape. Get that into our pressure cooker over here, and we'll wash the rice first. But I'm going to make, that's 1 cup. I'm using half cups, 2. There's 3. And like I said, we're going to go wash this and put it in our pressure cooker, put it on the rice setting, and after it heats up, about 12 minutes roughly, it'll be all done and ready to go. And now that our rice is in the pressure cooker, we're going to go ahead and chop some of this cabbage. Not all of it, we just need a little bit, so I'll peel off the outer leaves here, just to get rid of anything that might be on the outer side. And later, we will also go through and rinse it after it's done being chopped. But we're just going to shred up a little bit. Now, they do make cabbage like slicers, like a kind of like a mandolin type thing, but specifically for cabbage, and it will shred it fine. But we don't have one of those, so we're going to do the best we can with what we have today. So I'm going to cut a small piece off here, just for the sake of what we need. Put the rest aside. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to get rid of this rough piece here. And then we are going to slice this down really, really fine. Right. And as you can see, we have some finely shredded up cabbage here. And like I said, we'll go ahead and we'll give that a rinse and then take it and get it ready for our dish. So we'll set that aside for now. All right, so we are nearing the end of our tonkatsu dish. So basically what we need to do to make the fried meat chop is bread and fry the meat chops, right? So first and foremost, I have a dish with panko breadcrumbs in here. And when you're buying these from the store, one of the things that's recommended in most of the recipes that I had seen for this is to moisten these a little bit. So one person said they used like a mister of some sort, and for me, what I ended up doing in order to get them nice and kind of spongy in a way is I just took some water in my hand under the faucet and just dropped it on in places and then mixed it around together. So we're setting that aside for a little bit, just until we get that done. Just until it's time to actually coat them and fry them. Now I also have a little bit of flour in a glass dish here that's ready to go as well. And then the last thing we need to do is we have eggs here. So we're gonna have an egg batter as part of it as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to add about a half a tablespoon of vegetable oil per one egg. So in this case, we're going to use a whole tablespoon. And I've got 6 cutlets to bread up. So we'll set this oil aside because we'll need that for the actual frying. But we're going to go ahead and whisk these eggs together with the oil, get it all ready to go for our coating. Now, when you're actually doing this part and you're actually breading everything up, it's completely up to you what you're comfortable with using. In most cases, you'll want to use a flatter or lower dish to go ahead and dip everything in when you're coating it in the flour, the egg, the breadcrumb. And for me, I don't have a ton of like low lip dishes, so I'm using these that are kind of just thin glass baking dishes that they'll do the job, they'll do what I need them to, and kind of keep everything nice and contained. So, now that we've got that prepared, next we have to actually prepare our pork. And to do so, I'm going to need another knife, and we're going to open up our pork here. And now we have our package open. What we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these cutlets, these pork chops, whatever you want to call it. We're going to trim this excess fat off, each one, and then prepare them for the actual breading process. A little bit of fat is okay because it'll help cook it off in the long run. But we need to clean the majority of it off, because otherwise then you're going to get a big mouthful of fat, and that's not really the most appetizing thing here. So I'm just going to try to trim just the fat as best as I can and not take too much of the meat. Looking good. Like I said, a little bit is okay. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we've got some of this like connective tissue and little bits of fat in the way here, in the area of our meat. We're going to make some different slits across them. Nothing too crazy, but this is going to also help to tenderize our meat. So I'm just kind of a little bit cross-hatched here. Not too much, again, you don't want to overdo it. You just want it to be nice and prepared and ready so that it cooks properly. And by doing this, you're basically just opening it up a little bit more so that everything gets cooked evenly, and at the same time all your flavor is maintained and the fat and things can kind of cook out and help to, again, make sure it's cooked evenly and nicely. Now the other thing about doing this is your meats, your fats and stuff like that, it shrinks and expands at different rates, the meat itself versus the fat versus those tissues. So by doing this, you give it more of a chance to cook evenly all throughout. That's part of why we tenderize meat the way that we do in a lot of cases. So, now of course, if you wanted to, you could also use a meat tenderizer, a mallet of some sort, or, you know, one of the things that you can kind of hold in your hand and hit it down on top of the meat, and it tends to shove like little tiny blades into it that open it up a little bit more. You could do stuff like that too, depends on what you have in your kitchen. But in this case, this is what I'm working with. So that's that. Now, essentially, we're gonna take each of these and we're gonna season them up a little bit. And I'll do it on both sides on each here. So let me wash up first. And now, as we go ahead to season them, I'm going to use a little bit of ground black pepper on each. and a little bit of kosher salt. And again, flip them over and do the same on the other side. Don't over season it too. I mean, it's always to your liking, but at the same time, sometimes you can overpower it with too much. So, less is more in a lot of cases with your seasonings. All right. So now comes the fun part. We are essentially going to do our breading process. And what we need to do is we're going to dredge in flour first, then egg, then our panko bread. And then we're gonna get ready to fry. So, let's start. I'm gonna get a small area that we can use to put our finished product on until we fry it. And then I also have a sheet tray with a drying rack, set on top of it so that we can put them on top after frying. All right, so first and foremost, just coat it evenly all over with flour. And then we want to dust off any excess, because if you have too much on, it'll prevent the egg from sticking. So it's just going to be a light coating. Now, you want to adhere to the rule of thumb, a dry hand and a wet hand. If you've ever done any kind of breading, too much, if you have both hands wet and dry, you're going to run into problems. So, now we flip over our wet, we get this nice and coated with our panko. Get them to stick nicely. And we have a nicely breaded cutlet. We'll set that aside. And again, dust off the excess flour. You just shake it a little bit, place it into your wet. Use your wet hand to coat it with the egg, and then into the panko. And I like to, when we're in the panko here, press it down a little bit so that it sticks. The breading is going to stick really nicely. We're going to make sure we get plenty on it here, because if it's too loose, it's going to fall off. So there's two. Don't be afraid, guys. Don't be afraid to make a little bit of a mess. It happens. Cleanup's fairly easy. Just make sure to properly sanitize your counters, your work area, and when you're done, so that way you prevent any chance of foodborne illness and things like that. So never be afraid to make a mess. Making a mess is half the fun of working in a kitchen. Whether it's your home kitchen, whether it's in an industrial kitchen of any kind, anything like that. It's just a lot of fun to work in. Okay, and now we've got all of them coated. We're gonna let them rest and let the breading kind of set on them for about 5 to 10 minutes. And in the meantime, we're just gonna clean up our work area. So, I'll be right back. All right, our oil is almost up to temperature here. Basically, we have a pot of oil going here. I have a thermometer clipped on the side just to help keep track of the temperature. Now, if you don't have a thermometer, you can do some small tricks like dropping a piece of the panko breading in, and as long as it sinks and then pops back up to the top, then you know that it should be ready to fry. There's the old water trick that you could use where you get a little bit of water and you sprinkle it in there and it'll pop, bubbles and stuff like that. But you gotta be careful, you don't use too much because obviously oil and water don't mix. You just get a little bit on the fingertips and then flick it in. That's an option that you can use. But again, it's safer to do something like the panko itself. Now, what you're aiming for though, in terms of your temperature, you want to try and get this up to around 340 degrees Fahrenheit if you're measuring directly with a thermometer. Now I have this clipped on and we have reached our temp, so I'm gonna go ahead and set it aside for now. Now you don't want to overcrowd your pot. You're gonna go ahead and put one piece in at a time and fry it. And do not touch it. Leave it go for a minute. Now, once that minute's up, you'll flip it. And we're going to use a pair of metal tongs here to do so. We'll go ahead and we'll reach in and flip it. Actually, let me get my longer ones. And once it's time, like I said, we'll reach in, we'll flip it, and then it'll be ready after that second minute. We'll go ahead and we'll put it on our drying rack to drip off the excess oil, and it'll be ready to do a second fry after it sits a little bit. So, let's give this a little bit more time. Alright, now we'll flip it, give it another minute. You have to be very careful. You don't want to mess with it too much, and you don't want the oil to be too hot because it will burn, but the quicker you get this done, the better. And I'm just using vegetable oil to fry it in. Simple, neutral oil, nothing too crazy. Alright, now it should be nice and fried up for our first fry, and we're going to just drip off some excess oil, and then, like I said, we'll place it on our drying rack. Now, as you can see, there's already breading and stuff falling to the bottom. But again, we don't want to overcrowd our pot. We don't want to splash or anything like that. So we're going to give it time. And the thing is, we're going to rest each one of these cutlets on this drying rack to drip off excess oil, and the heat will still remain in that and continue to cook it even though it's out of the pot. Once it's done, once it's sat for at least 4 minutes, if you're doing one or two at a time, sit it for about 4 minutes, and then you'll continue, get everything ready, and then get ready to do another fry. We'll bring the oil back up to temp and make sure that it's fully temped when it's time, because that way, when you go into the second fry, you actually want it a little bit hotter. You can go to about 355, 360-ish to get that temp proper. And then, that second fry, it should come out, be done, you can rest it, and it should be fully cooked at that point. So, this is ready for its flip. Now, if you have a larger pot or a deep fryer, of course you can use the basket and stuff like that to go ahead and, you know, dunk a couple of these at once. Quick fry, be done, pop them out, you know, let them dry in the basket, dunk them down in again. You know, it makes it kind of easier in that regard, but we're working at home here. We don't have that kind of option. So we're just going to go ahead and let this do its thing and prepare to do this one at a time. Now our last cutlet is in right now. We just put it in. And it's always a good idea, best practice, to go ahead and temp your oil every so often just to make sure that it's retaining temperature. Now these are all sitting again as we go, 1 minute by 1 minute for each side of the fry, and then these are resting over here on our drying rack. And basically, once that's all said and done, this last one's done, one of two things. If you want to, you can take a moment to try and clean up your oil and scoop out some of the extra, you know, little bits of panko and whatnot. But we're kind of ready to go ahead on to the second fry, so I'm going to make this quick and just kind of jump into frying it again. Because then that leftover breading, once this is all said and done, is done. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not using it for anything else. You know, the oil, I mean, so we're just gonna make it quick and let it go. But one of the other reasons that you might want to scoop that out is to protect from any kind of burnt sensation, flavor, taste, anything like that. But we're doing this quick enough that I don't believe we're gonna have to worry about that. So this is on its last minute, and once that's done, we're gonna take it out. We're gonna get started on the second fry. All right, drip off that excess oil. These are looking beautiful as it is. And now we'll set that off on the drying rack. Now, again, we've got all this excess in the bottom. If you want, you could take a little bit of like a metal sieve or something and, you know, scoop that out. Or if you have a metal spoon, you want to use that, you can do that. I don't really have anything ready at the moment, but that's okay. Like I said, we're going to jump right in and get this on its second fry. Everything should sit and rest roughly 4 minutes, but since we've done 6 chops here, 6 cutlets, it's taking us more than enough time to go ahead and have them rest. So technically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The first cutlet has rested for about 10 minutes already. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready to get that fried. But first things first, we gotta bring our oil back up to temp. So I've got it heating up. We've got our thermometer back on. Let's go ahead and get it back up to temperature, and then we'll begin that second frying process. This time around, when you're getting your oil heated up, you want to aim for about 355 Fahrenheit instead of the 340, 345 range that we did the first fry on. Just because this is going to guarantee that we get everything fully cooked, we're going to have an extra crispy outside to our pork cutlets, and that big all-important insurance, again, that it is fully cooked and ready to serve. So, we get it heated up, and as it stands, I've got my oil right where I want to. What's cool is I've been watching this thermometer the whole time, and it pops up in about half-degree intervals as it's heating. So, we are up to where we need to be. So I'm turning down the heat so it evens out. And this time though, we are heating our cutlets for only 30 seconds on each side. So, get it off the wire rack, and we put it in. We fry it for 30 seconds, flip it 30 seconds more, and then back on to the rack. And look at that beautiful color there. Gorgeous. So, next one in. Nice, dark, beautiful color, ready to go. Now again, it'll come out a little bit lighter if you don't leave the extra breadcrumbs in the bottom, but it's not burnt, it's just a nice dark color. And our final piece going in here now. Again, 30 seconds on each side, and then it will be ready to go. And since we're done, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat off preemptively just because these last 30 seconds will go by. It'll maintain its heat, we'll be good to go. And there we go. Drain off the excess oil, then over onto the cooling rack. Now they need to sit for at least 2 minutes before you do anything else with them. So what I'm gonna do in the meantime is my little other burner here that I had set my tongs on has a little bit of oil on it. I'm gonna go ahead and just wash that off and dry it to make sure that there's nothing underneath the pot. And we're gonna carefully make sure the handles are cool. They're good enough to touch. I'm gonna lift this and put it on that other burner to start to cool down. Now always remember safety when it comes to handling the hot oil. Let it cool completely. And if you want to, in the grocery store, you can buy this, it's kind of like a powder type of stuff that you can pour into the oil to help solidify it so you can dispose of it properly. Never dump it down your drain, especially while hot. It will solidify and cool with water and stuff like that. It could damage your pipes as well as cause clogs and things like that. So this is your best option. Just let it cool completely, set it aside, and then dump it into the trash can once it's solid. And now that our tonkatsu is cooled, in order to begin plating, we're gonna take our piece and we're going to cut it into sections. Just cut right through. I'm gonna make sure that it's fully cooked. And this definitely is. It looks good. You can go 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch chunks. And if you're ever uncomfortable with the cook of your meat, and you can't tell just by the color, you want to make sure to use the thermometer. So, let's go ahead and begin plating. So, first up, let's go ahead and place a nice bed of our cooked rice down on one side of the plate. And that's nice and ready for our tonkatsu. And now on the other side, we're gonna place some of that cabbage that we shredded up earlier to make sort of a cabbage slaw. Just a little bit there. Now, if you remember, we made ourselves a dressing for that. And we're going to go ahead and put some of that dressing, just drizzle it over the cabbage. You don't want it to be overboard and to seep into your other food and things like that. It may taste good together, but the goal is to just kind of make it like a little bit of a light slaw. So there's that. Now we're going to go ahead and lay our tonkatsu over with the rice and get our homemade tonkatsu sauce that was in the fridge. And we are going to put it all over the top. All right, one plate down, one to go. Okay, next up, our pork has been marinating for roughly 4 hours here. So I'm gonna uncover it, and we have a sheet pan here with a metal rack on top. We're gonna go ahead and get this pork on it and ready to roast. We've got our oven preheating, and basically what we're gonna do, as you can see, we're just gonna line it onto the tray. We'll get this roasting, try to let it roast evenly. We're gonna roast it for about 50 minutes in a 475-degree oven. And more or less, what we're gonna do is get it done about 25 minutes, then flip it, and from there, after about 25 minutes, we'll flip it and then leave it for another 25, and from there, we will have our pork ready for our Cheung Fun dish. So let's get our last little piece on here for now. This one will work. So I've got a small tray here, and I've got a little bit left that I'll set aside and I'll roast that another time. And next, we are going to prep to make our Cheung Fun sauce. So while the pork is roasting, let's go ahead and get our sauce made, get our batter ready for the noodles, and we will be ready to eat very soon. So first up, we're gonna slice up a shallot here. I'm gonna cut off the ends. Now the nice thing about this, you could use onion and garlic, stuff like that. I like using a shallot for this just because it kind of has a garlicky kind of taste to it in a way. It's a little bit sweet, so it's kind of on the end of like a sweet onion, but it's kind of what we're going for. And we use this shallot along with a couple other ingredients to make a pretty good sauce to top this with. Now another thing that you could use, aside from, again, onion, garlic, things like that, is you could use a handful of shiitake mushrooms. You could take some dried ones and rehydrate them, or if you can get fresh, you can get fresh, no big deal. But one way or another, that's an option that you could add in. And of course, we'll have scallions later that will go into our batter and we'll top things with. So we've got our sliced up shallot here. Keep it thin sliced. Not super thin, but at the same time, you know, decent slice. Otherwise, if you're using just plain onion, go use about a half of like a medium to large size onion. In this, shallots are relatively small, so you're not going to use too much anyways. Now for this, we'll need a small saucepan. We're going to combine our ingredients here together and we're going to start to combine our ingredients in here. Basically, our oil and our onion, and we'll get that kind of browned up a little bit, and then we'll start to add our other ingredients. So let's start with about a half tablespoon of our neutral cooking oil. And then put our onions, or our shallots, in. And let's move this over to a burner. All right, as you guys can see, I have got the onions browning up, or the shallots, I should say. Again, I'm kind of, I keep saying onion because of the fact that you can use onion in this, onion and garlic, but I went with shallot to kind of have a little combination of both, and something that my understanding is used relatively commonly in Chinese cooking. So now that these are browned up a little bit, we're pouring in about a half a cup of water, roughly. And from here, we're going to bring that up to a boil. And this is already almost up to a boil. Once it's up here, we're going to basically let it simmer for about 3 minutes. Push down the shallot that's on the side there so we have everything inside the water. And after the 3 minutes, we're going to add a couple more ingredients before setting it aside. Okay, so now we've simmered for about 3 minutes. We're going to add soy sauce here by the tablespoon, as well as some oyster sauce, some MSG, and a little bit of sugar. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, if you have the option to use light and dark soy sauce, you'll use mostly light soy sauce, about 4 tablespoons, and then like a half tablespoon-ish of your dark soy sauce. But I just have regular light soy sauce, so I'm going with that. And now, again, oyster sauce, you're going to use about a tablespoon of it. Just a pinch of our MSG. And 2 tablespoons of sugar. Now we'll go ahead and just combine that all together here. Stir it up. I'll use a whisk here. Stir it up, stir it up. And then we'll leave it to simmer for a couple more minutes. All right, so now our sauce has simmered a bit. Now you have one of 2 choices. At this point in time, you could go ahead and strain it through a sieve to get rid of the solid bits that are in it. Or what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let it sit aside to cool on a burner, and then we'll pass it through afterwards. Next up, it's time to mix our batter for the noodles. And now it's time for us to go ahead and get our mixture made for our batter. So I've got a whisk here ready to go, and I've got our ingredients set aside. Now, first and foremost, we need our rice flour that we ground up earlier. So we're going to use about 3/4 of a cup. It's just a little bit shy, so we'll add enough in to cover it. We'll set aside the rest. Next up, we need cornstarch. We're going to use just a little bit shy of a 1/4 cup. Basically, what it calls for is about 1 3/4 ounce, roughly, of the cornstarch. So that converts over to roughly what we need here. And then we need to add salt. We're going to use about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And again, I'm just kind of sticking with our kosher salt here. So there's our 1/4 teaspoon. And then we need a teaspoon of our neutral cooking oil, or in this case, we're using vegetable oil. So we're just going to start to stir this a little bit. We're going to add about 1/3 of our water, which we have about 1.5 cups of water setting aside. So I'll add a little bit in our 1/2 cup. That's 1/3. And we're going to start to mix it. Stir it until it starts to smoothen out. As you can see, the lumps are starting to disappear. And now that it's smoother, we're going to add the rest of our water. And there, we are mixed and ready to go. It is a thin batter, but that's perfectly fine. Now, we just have to finish roasting our pork. And then after the pork is roasted, we'll be ready to put all this together. We have our sauce made, we have this made. The last thing we're gonna do while waiting for the pork to roast is to chop a few scallions up. We got a couple of our scallions, aka green onions here, ready to go. So I'm gonna chop off the ends and then we'll prepare to cut them here and chop them into our pieces that we need, not only for our filling, but a little bit of a topping as well. So you want to keep it small. Keep it small, comfortable, chewable, bite size, nothing too crazy. And since we're not cooking a ton of this right now, we don't need a ton of these to begin with. I have 2 here, but I have a whole bag full of them in my fridge. So if I need to cut more, I can. But for what I'm going to be doing, this will be more than enough. All right. And now our green onion, our scallion, is chopped up and ready for our filling. We'll slide that aside. And now we just wait for the pork to finish. At this point in time, we still have about 10 minutes for the first side, and then we've got to flip it. So we'll let it go. All right, now once our pork is finished up, we need to get a piece over here and slice it very, very thinly. So it's done. It just came out of the oven here. And I'm gonna place a piece here. And we're gonna get ready to slice it down very thin so it can go into our batter. Now, I'm going to grab a fork here to help me in this process. But as you can see, it's got a nice kind of crispy outer edge. The very back side, because of the fat being rendered, is a little bit extra crispy. So we have some char to it. But we're just going to slice it as thinly as possible. Okay. And of course, we got to do a taste test, right? Wonderful. Now, what we need to do to finish this off is basically get it in some receptacle in some way, shape, or form that we can steam it, and then effectively roll our noodles. So I'm going to make sure that our batter is mixed up, and typically what you'd want to do is use like a wok or a pot or pan of some sort, and use like a small tray or pan that you can pour the batter on thinly, put it in with water, steam it that way. What we're going to do though today is I have a heat safe bowl, oven safe bowl that I'm going to be using, and we already brushed it with some oil. It's lightly brushed with the vegetable oil. We are going to take and put about 1/4 cup-ish, maybe a little bit more of the batter into it, let it cover the bottom, add some of our filling, which is going to be the char siu pork and some of the scallions, and then we're going to put it in. I have my pressure cooker here, my Instant Pot pressure cooker off to the side. We'll put it in there. I've got about 2 cups of water in the bottom, and there's a trivet, a little metal rack that you sit down on the inside. We'll sit this bowl down in, cover it with the lid, and set it to steam. So let's go ahead and add our mixture. Like I said, about 1/4 cup-ish maybe a little more, depending on the size of the tray or bowl or whatever that we're going to use. Make sure it's nice and mixed up. Okay, and then we're definitely going to need a lot more. There we go. And now, lay a couple pieces of our pork into it. And some of our scallions. Not too much, but just enough that we have filling. And now, we're going to put this into our crock pot. Okay, so now our noodles have finished steaming. I've went ahead and lifted the lid off of our crock pot here, and I'm going to get in here with a pot holder, and we're going to go ahead and set this down here. Now, this is the hard part. We basically need to get in here and kind of roll it if we can to get it out of here. Which actually what I might do is get it out onto a plate and try it that way. Let's get it separated from the edge using our spatula here. And then let's see if we can get it onto a plate. Let me grab another pot holder. And let's try to flip it. Oh no. Well, unfortunately, in the process there, it didn't quite stay together, at least not enough to roll it properly, so it doesn't look the prettiest, but at least we have our cooked noodle dish. So right now it's kind of like an omelet, but typically you're supposed to roll it up a little bit more and then we'll cut it into pieces. Now I'll do that. I'll go ahead and just kind of cut it in a couple of places here so it's ready to eat. We'll keep our pork and stuff together. And then for the last bit of plating, we're going to add a little bit of that sauce that we made earlier. And top it off with just a bit more of the green onion. And that is the gist of our rice noodle dish, our Cheung Fun. So here we are with our final dishes. We have the fried meatchop and rice, tonkatsu, with a cabbage slaw, and we have the Cheung Fun. Now, overall, the cooking process wasn't too bad. I enjoyed it. It was fairly easy to follow each recipe. Now, could I have done better? Possibly. I think I did better on the tonkatsu dish easily. But as much as the Cheung Fun kind of fell apart and didn't really give me the chance to roll it, it still looks good, it still looks appetizing, and I'm excited to try both. But the question is, which one, if presented to me, in an interrogation would get more information out of me. So let's go ahead, give each dish a try, and then we'll talk about it. Let's start with the tonkatsu, since that was the first one we cooked. Let's get a little bit of this cabbage first. Pretty interesting flavor overall. Now, let's go ahead and give our Cheung Fun a try. Get a little bit of that. Okay. So, there's a lot more flavor overall to the tonkatsu. It's a great dish. You get the crispiness, the fried outside, the breading of the pork. It's perfectly cooked, very tender. The sauce gives it just a nice flavor adjustment that kind of balances nicely with the breading. And of course, the sauce is good because the plain white rice underneath, it helps to balance things out. Very, very delicious. And the cabbage slaw is a good pairing on the side. The dressing's great. And typically, you could make this slaw not just with the cabbage, but they'll use like Japanese cucumber and stuff like that as well. But just as the cabbage is fine. Overall, great flavor. Really comforting type of food. Now, on the other hand, the Cheung Fun, also very comforting, has a bit more flavor than I anticipated. I kind of expected the noodles to be a little more plain. And I know that the sauce itself is helping, as well as the char siu pork. Now, I know that another option that you could have used in the noodles, in the filling, was shrimp. You could use like little shrimp or dehydrated shrimp, rehydrate them, put them in, stuff like that. Those are options that were mentioned in the recipes that I was using as inspiration. But overall, the flavor, there's a little more there than I expected it to be. And I like it. It just kind of reminds me of a simple home type of pasta type dish in a way. But again, the appearance isn't the greatest because it kind of messed up in the very end there in terms of getting it out of the dish, rolling it, which of course we didn't get to roll it. It kind of folded more like an omelet, but it still came out and is a decent, solid looking dish. Which one would make me talk more? I'm going to have to go with the tonkatsu, the fried meat chop with rice. So, if I was being interrogated in Mitsukue, I would have to go with the tonkatsu. That would get more information out of me. That would be their way to get me to snitch on whatever the crime was. That being said, let me know if you've tried either of these dishes. Or, what kind of food would make you talk if you were in the interrogation room? This was a lot of fun to make. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the process, and I hope that in the future, none of us get interrogated anywhere on Terra. For now, though, please make sure to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more fun Arknights cooking content. And with that, that is it for this one. We will see you all next time with Cooking with Arknights.